"Go and work in the vineyard today." And he answered, "I will not." But afterward he changed his mind, and he went. And he went to the other son and said the same. And he answered, "I will go, sir," but did not go. Which of the two sons did the will of the father?
The first!
He was, "I love you. I do not want to see you suffer."
The Son of Man must suffer many things.
No, I can't hear this.
The prophet Isaiah gave you many warnings.
The night has fallen, the clock is ticking, and everything is about to change. The Chosen Season 6 Episode 1 trailer doesn't just tease a story. It pulls us into the darkest hours in history. This trailer makes one thing clear right away. Season 6 is not playing by the same rules as anything we've seen before. From the very first moments, you can feel the weight. This isn't a season about long journeys, public miracles, or crowds following Jesus from town to town. This is a season locked into time, one single day. The final day, and Episode 1 is where that pressure fully starts to crush everyone involved. The trailer doesn't rush, it doesn't rely on spectacle. Instead, it leans into silence, shadows, and the unbearable tension of knowing what's coming but being unable to stop it. What stands out immediately is the atmosphere. Everything feels heavy, restrained, almost suffocating. Season 6 takes place almost entirely at night, and the trailer uses that darkness as a storytelling tool. This isn't just a visual choice, it mirrors the spiritual reality of these moments. Betrayal doesn't happen in daylight, fear doesn't scream loudly, it whispers in the dark. And the trailer understands that perfectly. Every pause, every look, every half-finished sentence feels intentional. You can sense that the characters are running out of time, and more importantly, running out of understanding. Episode 1 appears to focus on the beginning of the trial of Jesus. And the trailer frames this not as a dramatic courtroom showdown, but as something far more unsettling. Jesus is present, but he isn't fighting back. He isn't explaining himself, he isn't trying to win anyone over. Instead, he stands in complete control through silence. That silence feels louder than any speech. The religious leaders around him feel frantic, defensive, almost desperate to justify what they're doing, and the contrast is chilling. The more they speak, the more empty their words feel. The less Jesus says, the more authority he carries. The trailer also gives us strong hints about how the disciples are being portrayed in this moment. This is not the confident group we've seen in earlier seasons. These are men unraveling in real time. Confusion, fear, denial, and guilt are all written on their faces. You can feel that they want to protect Jesus, but they don't understand how. They still think there's a way out of this. They still believe something can be fixed. And that misunderstanding is what makes this episode so painful. The audience knows what they don't, and the trailer leans hard into that emotional gap. Another important detail is how grounded everything feels. The trailer doesn't exaggerate events. It doesn't make the trial look theatrical or overly dramatic. Instead, it feels disturbingly real. This isn't evil wearing obvious masks. This is power protecting itself. This is fear disguised as righteousness. And Episode 1 looks like it's setting the stage for that idea very clearly. The accusations feel rushed, the questioning feels unfair, and the outcome feels decided before the conversation even starts. The trailer makes it obvious that justice isn't the goal here, control is. What really elevates this trailer is how it respects the audience. It doesn't explain everything. It trusts viewers to understand the weight of what they're seeing. Small expressions matter, a glance held too long, a door closing, a voice lowering instead of rising. These details suggest that Season 6 Episode 1 is less about action and more about consequence. Every choice made in this episode echoes forward into the crucifixion itself. Nothing here is accidental, nothing is wasted. By the end of the trailer, the message is clear. This episode isn't designed to entertain in the usual sense. It's designed to confront, to sit with discomfort, to force the audience to experience the waiting, the uncertainty, and the injustice that define these hours. Season 6 Episode 1 isn't easing us into the story. It's dropping us straight into the deep end and asking us to stay there. And if this trailer is any indication, this season is going to demand more from its audience than ever before. What makes Episode 1 especially powerful, based on this trailer, is how it frames the trial of Jesus as something deeply broken from the very start. This isn't presented as a fair search for truth. It feels rushed, tense, and already decided. The trailer strongly suggests that this moment is less about evidence and more about fear. Fear of losing power, fear of losing control, fear of what Jesus represents. and that fear drives every word spoken against him. The religious leaders don't come across as confident villains, instead, they feel uneasy, almost threatened. The trailer hints at conflicting testimonies, raised voices, and accusations that don't quite land. Nothing lines up cleanly, and that's important, because it shows that the system itself is cracking under pressure. They want an outcome, not clarity, and when truth doesn't cooperate, they push harder. This creates a sense of chaos that sits in sharp contrast to Jesus' calm presence. Jesus' silence is one of the most striking elements teased in the trailer. In earlier seasons, we've seen him teach, explain, challenge, and comfort. Here, he does none of that, and that choice is deliberate. His silence isn't weakness, it's judgment. It exposes the emptiness of the accusations being thrown at him. The more they demand answers, the more uncomfortable the room becomes. It's almost as if everyone knows, deep down, that words no longer matter. The trailer also seems to highlight the personal cost of this moment for the disciples. This isn't happening somewhere far away. They're close enough to hear about it, to sense it, to feel it slipping out of their control. You can feel their panic building. Some want to fight, some want to hide, some don't know what to do at all, and that division is painful to watch. Episode 1 looks like it's capturing the exact moment when belief collides with fear. Peter, in particular, is hinted at as someone already starting to break under the pressure. The trailer doesn't spell it out, but you can feel the tension in his body language. This is the beginning of his internal collapse. He still loves Jesus. He still believes in him, but belief suddenly feels dangerous. And that fear sets the stage for what's coming next. The denial doesn't come out of nowhere. It grows right here in this episode, in this unbearable waiting. Another thing the trailer does extremely well is showing how alone Jesus truly is. Even when surrounded by people, he's physically present, but emotionally abandoned. His closest followers don't understand what he's choosing. His enemies misunderstand him completely, and the authorities see him as a problem to be solved. That isolation is crushing, and episode 1 seems determined to make us feel every second of it. The pacing suggested by the trailer is slow, intentional, and heavy. This episode doesn't look like it's rushing toward the crucifixion. Instead, it's making us sit in the injustice of the process. Every delay hurts, every false claim stings, every unanswered question adds weight, and that's exactly the point. The pain doesn't begin at the cross, it begins here, in rooms filled with voices that refuse to listen. By the time episode 1 ends, it feels like the season has already drawn its line in the sand. There is no turning back. The decisions made here lock everything into motion. The trailer makes it clear that season 6 isn't interested in softening this story or making it easier to digest. It wants us to experience the discomfort, the unfairness, and the sorrow as it unfolds. And if this is just the beginning, then what's coming next is going to be even harder to watch and impossible to forget. Another major thing the trailer quietly communicates is how power shifts the moment Rome enters the story. Episode 1 doesn't just stay inside religious conflict, it slowly widens the lens, showing how this situation grows beyond faith and becomes political. Once Jesus is handed over to Roman authority, everything changes. The tone becomes colder, more procedural, and far more dangerous. The trailer hints that truth matters even less once power is involved. Pontius Pilate is teased as a man caught between conscience and pressure. The trailer doesn't frame him as a monster. Instead, it presents him as someone who knows something is wrong but doesn't have the courage to stop it. His questions feel careful, his words feel measured, and yet, every pause suggests hesitation, not conviction. Episode 1 appears to show the very beginning of his internal struggle. He's not interested in theology, he's interested in order. And Jesus threatens that order simply by existing. What makes this so effective is that Jesus still refuses to play the game. He doesn't defend himself in the way Pilate expects. He doesn't beg. He doesn't argue. He answers only when necessary. And even then, his words are minimal. The trailer suggests that Pilate senses something different about him, something unsettling. Not guilt, not rebellion, authority, and that's what scares him most. Power always recognizes power. The crowd also starts to feel more present in this episode. Even if they're not fully formed yet, the trailer hints at voices growing louder, opinions hardening, and pressure mounting. This isn't a calm decision made in isolation, it's chaos building step by step. Episode 1 looks like it's planting the seeds of mob mentality. Individuals stop thinking. Responsibility gets diluted, and suddenly no one feels fully accountable for what's about to happen. What's especially haunting is how normal everything feels. There's no dramatic music screaming at you, no exaggerated reactions. Just people doing what people have always done. Protecting their positions, avoiding risk, choosing safety over truth, and that normality makes the injustice even harder to watch. The trailer makes it clear that evil doesn't always look violent at first. Sometimes it looks organized, calm, reasonable. The disciples, meanwhile, seem increasingly sidelined in this episode. They're no longer participants, they're spectators, watching events move faster than they can process, and that helplessness is brutal. These are men who left everything to follow Jesus, and now they can't even stand beside him. Episode 1 appears to lean into that emotional distance. The separation between Jesus and his followers isn't just physical, it's spiritual confusion. They don't understand why he's allowing this. One of the most powerful ideas teased in the trailer is inevitability, not because God is forcing events to happen, but because human choices are stacking up in a way that leaves no escape. Every authority figure chooses convenience, every witness chooses silence or lies, every follower chooses fear, and Jesus alone chooses obedience. That contrast is devastating. Episode 1 looks like it's drawing a clear line between human instinct and divine purpose. The trailer also suggests that Season 6 is trusting silence more than dialogue. Long looks replace speeches, stillness replaces action, and that's a bold move. It forces the audience to sit with discomfort instead of being distracted by explanation. You're not told what to feel, you're shown a world slowly closing in on someone innocent. And you're left to wrestle with that reality yourself. By the time this episode moves forward, it feels like the machinery of execution has already started turning, not because a sentence has been passed, but because hearts have hardened. Episode 1 doesn't need to show the cross to make the story hurt. It only needs to show people choosing wrong when they know better. And the trailer strongly suggests that this episode is where that tragic pattern becomes impossible to ignore. One of the most unsettling things the trailer suggests about Episode 1 is how quickly responsibility starts getting passed around. No one wants to be the one to make the final call. Everyone is looking for an exit, a loophole, a way to say, this wasn't really my decision. And that constant deflection is what makes this episode feel so painfully human. The injustice doesn't come from one evil act, it comes from a chain of small compromises. As the story moves forward, Jesus is no longer being questioned to understand him, he's being questioned to trap him. The trailer hints that every word spoken around him is calculated, strategic, and self-serving. Meanwhile, Jesus remains completely grounded. There's no panic in him, no desperation. That contrast is jarring. The people with power are the ones who seem afraid. The one facing death is the calmest person in the room. The Roman involvement deepens this tension even more. The trailer suggests that Pilate's uncertainty only grows as the pressure increases. He sees no real crime, he hears no real threat. Yet the noise around him becomes impossible to ignore. Episode 1 looks like it captures the exact moment where truth becomes inconvenient, where doing the right thing suddenly feels risky, and Pilate's struggle isn't about justice. It's about consequences. What will happen to him if he chooses wrong? This is also where public opinion starts to quietly shape the outcome. The trailer implies that the crowd's presence looms over every decision. Even when they're not visible, they're felt, their expectations, their anger, their hunger for resolution. Episode 1 doesn't show a mob out of control yet, but you can sense it forming. And that's often how it starts, not with violence, but with agreement. With people nodding along because it's easier than speaking up. For the disciples, this episode seems emotionally unbearable. They're watching someone they love be dismantled piece by piece, and they don't understand why God isn't intervening. The trailer suggests that their faith is being tested in a way miracles never could. This isn't about believing Jesus can do something, it's about trusting him when he chooses not to. And that's a much harder kind of faith. The loneliness of Jesus becomes even more pronounced here. Even when he's physically surrounded, he's spiritually isolated. No one truly stands with him. No one fully understands what he's choosing. Episode 1 appears to lean into that isolation hard. The silence around Jesus isn't peaceful. It's heavy, it presses down on every interaction, and the trailer makes it clear that this silence is intentional. This is the cost of obedience. Another subtle but powerful theme teased in the trailer is humiliation, not just physical suffering, but the stripping away of dignity. Jesus is mocked, dismissed, and spoken about as if he's no longer a person but a problem, and that dehumanization is chilling. Episode 1 seems determined to show how easily people justify cruelty once they stop seeing someone as worthy of respect. What's especially striking is how ordinary the setting feels. There's no dramatic lighting screaming evil, no exaggerated villain behavior, just rooms, officials, guards, and conversations. And that normality is what makes it horrifying. It reminds us that this didn't happen in a mythic vacuum, it happened in real spaces, with real people making real choices. Episode 1 seems committed to grounding the story in that uncomfortable reality. As the trailer moves toward its final moments, there's a sense that the door is closing. Not loudly, not violently, but firmly, each decision tightens the path forward. Each moment of silence seals the next outcome. Episode 1 isn't about shock. It's about inevitability, and by the time this episode reaches its end, it feels like the story has crossed a threshold. There's no undoing what's been set in motion. If the trailer is telling us anything, it's this: Season 6 Episode 1 isn't trying to prepare us gently. It's forcing us to confront how easily truth is sacrificed when fear takes over. And that realization is what makes this episode so heavy, not because of what happens next, but because of how many chances there were to stop it and how many were ignored. What really starts to hit hard in the trailer is the emotional collapse happening beneath the surface, especially among the people closest to Jesus. Episode 1 doesn't portray sudden failure, it shows slow erosion. Faith doesn't shatter all at once, it cracks quietly. The trailer suggests that fear creeps in through small moments, through unanswered prayers, through watching injustice unfold without interruption. And that kind of fear is the most dangerous because it feels reasonable. You can sense that the disciples are wrestling with two impossible truths at the same time. They believe Jesus is who he says he is, and yet they're watching him be treated like a criminal. That contradiction is unbearable. Episode 1 seems to live inside that tension. No speeches explaining it away, no miracle to reset the balance, just raw confusion. The kind that makes people doubt not because they want to, but because they don't know how to hold everything together anymore. Peter's internal struggle feels especially close in this episode. The trailer hints that his confidence is already fading. He's not bold anymore, he's alert, cautious, looking over his shoulder. This isn't cowardice yet, it's fear being born. And episode 1 appears to be very intentional about showing how denial doesn't come from hatred or betrayal, but from panic. From realizing that following Jesus now comes with a real cost. There's also a growing sense that time itself is an enemy. The trailer suggests that everything is happening too fast for anyone to process. Decisions are being made while emotions are still raw. Accusations are stacking up before truth can breathe. Episode 1 feels like a race against clarity. And clarity never arrives. That pressure cooker effect makes every interaction feel fragile. Like one wrong word could make everything worse. Jesus, meanwhile, remains steady in a way that's almost painful to watch. The trailer shows no sign of hesitation in him, no second guessing. He knows where this leads. And episode 1 seems focused on showing that obedience doesn't always look heroic. Sometimes it looks like restraint, like enduring misunderstanding, like allowing injustice to play out without interference. That kind of strength is uncomfortable because it doesn't fight back the way we want it to. Another powerful idea hinted at in the trailer is how violence begins long before the first blow. Words wound first. Accusations strip identity, mockery reduces someone to an object. Episode 1 seems to explore that progression carefully. By the time physical suffering begins, the spiritual and emotional damage has already been done. And that makes the coming pain feel heavier, not lighter. The trailer also suggests that authority figures are slowly losing control of the situation. They think they're managing. The more they try to contain Jesus, the more exposed their own insecurity becomes. Episode 1 looks like it's peeling back the illusion of order, revealing that what's happening isn't justice at all, but fear desperately trying to look official. As this episode moves closer to its end, there's a sense of spiritual exhaustion. Not just for the characters, but for the audience too. Episode 1 doesn't give relief, it doesn't offer closure, it leaves you sitting in the discomfort. And that's intentional because this story isn't about quick answers, it's about endurance. About walking through darkness without certainty. By the time episode 1 fades out, the trailer makes it clear that something irreversible has happened internally. Even if the external outcome isn't finalized yet, lines have been crossed. Hearts have shifted, loyalty has been tested, and the path forward has narrowed dramatically. Season 6 isn't asking whether the crucifixion will happen. It's asking how humanity arrived at a place where it could. And episode 1 looks like the moment where that question becomes impossible to ignore. By the time the trailer reaches its final moments, one thing becomes painfully clear. Season 6 episode 1 isn't designed to give us answers, it's designed to leave us sitting in the weight of the question, why does this have to happen this way? And the trailer doesn't rush to resolve that discomfort, it leans into it. It allows the silence to stretch, it allows the tension to linger. And that choice tells us exactly what kind of season this is going to be. Episode 1 feels like the doorway into something much heavier than anything The Chosen has attempted before, not because the events are new, but because of how close we're being pulled into them. The trailer suggests that we're not watching history from a safe distance. We're standing inside it, watching people make decisions in real time. Watching fear outweigh courage, watching convenience replace conviction. And that proximity makes everything hurt more. There's also a strong sense that this season is about consequence. Rather than action, every choice made in episode 1 sends a ripple forward, every moment of silence, every refusal to intervene. Every act of self-preservation builds toward the cross. The trailer makes it clear that nothing here exists in isolation. This isn't just the story of Jesus being condemned. It's the story of how systems, crowds, and individuals all play a role in allowing it to happen. What makes this episode especially powerful is how it reframes strength. Strength doesn't come from dominance or control, it comes from surrender. From obedience, from choosing faithfulness even when it leads to suffering. Episode 1 appears to set that theme very clearly. Jesus isn't overpowered, he's choosing this path. And that distinction matters. It changes how we understand everything that follows. The emotional weight teased in the trailer also suggests that this season will demand patience from its audience. This isn't fast-paced storytelling, it's deliberate, slow, heavy. Episode 1 asks viewers to sit with discomfort rather than escape it, and that's not easy, but it's honest. Because these moments weren't easy for the people who lived them either. The trailer also subtly reminds us that hope hasn't disappeared, even if it feels distant. Hope isn't loud in this episode, it's quiet, it exists in Jesus' resolve. In his refusal to abandon his purpose, episode 1 doesn't celebrate hope yet, it protects it, holds it steady in the darkness. And that restraint makes the eventual light more meaningful. As a starting point, episode 1 feels less like the beginning of a season and more like a descent, a necessary one. It strips away comfort. It removes illusions, it forces us to confront the cost of love, truth, and obedience. And if the trailer is any indication, Season 6 is going to walk that path without shortcuts. So if Season 5 prepared us emotionally, Season 6 Episode 1 looks like the moment where preparation ends and reality sets in. This isn't a story you watch casually, it's a story you endure, and by the time the episode ends, it feels like the ground beneath everything has shifted, the night has begun. The choices have been made, and this story is now moving forward, whether anyone is ready or not.